Welcome to CAMP Podcast Special Edition Piano Talk. I'm pianist Eunmi Ko, and I serve as president of the Contemporary Art Music Project, or CAMP. CAMP is an organization that promotes innovative art music and collaborates with composers and performing artists. One of many activities we do is our podcast series. Our hosts explore a wide range of topics from marginalized composers to current collaborations. Piano Talk brings you new piano repertoire and composers who wrote them. Tonight, I am your host, and I'm delighted to have composer Tyler Kline. Hi, Tyler. Thank you for joining us today, and I'm very excited to talk about your piano collection, Orchard.
Hi, I'm glad to be here.
So, what is Orchard? Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because I'm sure there are listeners who don't know about the Orchard.
Yeah, of course. So there's a lot to say about Orchard, but I guess I'll begin at the very beginning. Orchard was a piece that I composed kind of initially to fill a void in my compositional portfolio. Up until this point, I had never written solo piano music. Of course, I'd written piano music in other kinds of pieces that I have, instrument and piano, and then chamber music. But I found myself meeting pianists, a lot of pianists, just coming across them and talking a little bit, and they find out I'm a composer, and they would ask me, "Oh, do you have any solo piano music?" And they'd be really excited, and I always had to tell them no, I didn't have any solo piano music. So I kind of got this idea to kind of create a commissioning consortium so that I could write my first solo piano piece. And Eunmi, you and I talked about this kind of in the early stages of when I was considering what to do, how to create the piece, what kind of music to focus on. And I spoke with just a couple other pianists who seemed really excited about the idea of this piece. And so yeah, I created a commissioning consortium, which is a type of funding model that rather than one person pay a large commissioning fee or a standard commissioning fee, so that a composer will write the piece just for them, and then normally they're the only people that can play it for a year or so. A commissioning consortium allows many performers to join the commissioning opportunity. So that's kind of where Orchard started. But something I did differently with Orchard that I hadn't ever done before was, rather than a bunch of people commission one piece as part of the consortium, commissioners could commission tiny pieces from me, short pieces, and these would be collected into however many I ended up writing, which would be 50, and then all of the commissioners would receive this music. So, and then they could perform whatever they like. Orchard is set up to where pianists don't have to play the whole thing all at once, which is fine because it's an hour and a half long, I think. And they can play them in any order. They can pick and choose what fits with their existing program, or of course they could play all of them and make a concert out of Orchard. It's been done once before, so yeah, that's kind of the basics of how Orchard began, and it's come a long way since then.
Yes, I actually remember the conversation we had over a dinner. It was early stage of the Orchard, and I asked you about, is there any new contemporary pieces that is a bit like Bartok's Microcosmos, but then can it be more performable? Could I take these pieces to tour and include in the recital program? At the same time, can I teach these pieces to my students who are not familiar with new contemporary piano repertoire? And I thought they came out just perfect. And also the consortium idea just worked perfectly to piano studio. I think it was a lot of fun working on this whole project with my students and even other piano studios from other states.
Yeah. Well, I have to say I'm forever grateful to you because I never would have considered making this piece pedagogically inclined, I guess. I'm the type of composer I try to think of the craftsmanship and artistic capabilities of the music, and that's kind of my primary focus. And I tend to work with performers who are really great, really great performers who can kind of just do anything that I ask them to, and that up until Orchard, that those were the kinds of pieces I would write, of course, for various skill levels, but this was the first time, thanks to you, that I actually thought about, well, what if no one had ever played extended techniques on a piano and they encountered it for the first time, and how could that be taught through this music by a teacher like you? And so that there were a few things about Orchard that took me out of my comfort zone, but that was definitely one of them. And I'm always grateful to hear about and see performances that it's not just a professional pianist, playing them on a recital wherever. It tends to be an entire studio kind of splitting up some of the pieces between students, and that's happened quite a few times now at this
Okay,
point.
right. Yeah. There's sense of this community, orchard community. That's how I felt that when we gave this premiere concert of orchard pieces, and then we had this big orchard
Mm.
concert at the Tampa Museum of Art, um, and there were 11 pianists there, right?
I,
11.
I think, and then me, I think I play. Well, I did play. I don't know
Right.
if you want to consider me a pianist. I wouldn't. I'm not a pianist, but
Well, you played, so
there were 12. I think 12
well,
performers.
yeah, 12 performers playing a few pieces, and I felt there's this weird sense of community, and as a pianist, it's quite rare experience because we are soloist. We Of course there is orchestra pianist and we play chamber music, but
Mm.
I don't feel that we have that extensive experience like string players or wind players have, being in bigger ensemble and playing together. Um, so this was really a unique experience also for me to have many pianists and we're doing something together.
Well, and I'll add to that. I've done a few consortiums before this and a few after, and none of the pieces I have composed quite like Orchard, and none of them have had the same sense of community that you're talking about that
Mhm.
Orchard has had, despite the fact that it is a group of people who have come together to commission a piece. Um, there's just something about Orchard, I guess, that I don't know. It's a little extra special. I think it's exciting for pianists like you're describing. It's
Mhm.
exciting for me, and people are still playing Orchard who weren't involved in the original commission, who they weren't involved in the concert at the Tampa Museum of Art. And I kind of say, if you want to produce like a full concert of Orchard and be a part of something bigger, I would love that wherever they happen to be, and they get really excited about it. So there's just something about this piece, I guess. And I can't say that I planned for this. I can't take credit for that. It's, I guess it's just something about the music and about the way the music works, and the number of pieces and the way that they can be played. I guess it does foster that sense of community, which I love. I'm really glad that it does that.
Yeah, it's just like orchard. There are all these different plants and fruit trees
Yeah.
growing all together. Fruitful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Um, so yeah, I guess I'll also say, we haven't really touched on the programmatic aspects of Orchard.
Right.
It is 50 pieces, each one named after a fruit, and so the music. There's a few entry points that I took with each piece. And I landed on writing about fruit because I was interested in the name Yuzu, which was the very
Mhm.
first piece that I composed, and I kind of just I like the sound of the word. I like
Yeah.
the name of it. I would, of course, it's like a culinary. It's primarily used in like Japanese cuisine, and so that's how I encountered it. And it's like a lemon. It's a citrus
Mhm.
fruit, but I don't think there's too much flesh on the inside. So mostly the zest is used, and it's used to flavor all kinds of things. And so I thought, well, there's a lot of fruits with interesting names, and that's kind
Mhm.
of inspiring to me. That I can name these pieces, but also fruits have textures, fruits have tastes, smells. Fruits grow in different parts of the world, and all of those considerations went into how I compose the music. Like if a piece has a floral texture or a floral scent, I would come up with a floral texture musical equivalent, and in a lot of the pieces that are marked floral as a kind of descriptor, they feature tremolo notes in the piano, including one lychee, which is nothing but tremolos.
Right.
So, I kind of developed a language in Orchard that drew upon the different flavors of fruits and how a lot of fruits kind of share characteristics, but are also unique in their own way. Different textures. For example, okra has kind of a slimy texture. Well, but it also has seeds like that.
Mhm.
So how does slimy seedy music sound? And I had to come up with this stuff. So yeah, that I I never in a million years thought that I would write 50 pieces about fruit. I learned a lot about fruit by writing this music. I tasted a lot of different fruits. There's still some that I can't find, and I haven't ever tasted actually, that I'm hunting for. But hopefully one day I'll get to try all the fruits, and I know that an, something that both of us are interested in is presenting the music with all the fruits on a
Yes.
concert, which I hope to
Yeah.
do one day too.
That would be amazing. I mean, for
Yeah,
us also, it was education, getting to know that all this exotic fruits, and also that there's some fruit that we didn't think of it as fruit.
yeah,
So that was another education. Also, another thing I love about was that that how we get this tempo indication and Berber indication in front of the piece, before the
mhm,
meter and the key signature
yeah,
starts. Usually andante, there is allegro and all that, cantabile and adagio. But in your piece, instead you get, as you said, slimy and
yeah.
fragrant and waxy. And I thought it was so fun, and I love those indication, and it was just so refreshing to um, think about it when you have that, this Italian um, verbal indication in the piece. That's what we run into all the time. But
Yeah.
now there's something something newer and something new, and more kind of sensory, which
Mm.
was very nice and interesting. Also, I love that part.
And and those words were kind of tools for me as well. Like I've said, to build a musical language across the piece and all the
Mhm.
pieces, but also thinking about things like, well, what does sour music sound like? Well, to me, I mean, instantly I thought, well, dissonance. So a lot of the sour marked pieces have dissonance in them, and I think you know, as listeners, as performers, especially as um, students who might not be familiar with this music, that one word sour might be an entry point into appreciating more dissonant music. I think it kind of helps people wrap their head around it. So, there's a lot of functions to these little, I call them tasting notes, even though we don't taste them, but they're kind of like auditory tasting notes that I guess the fruit would taste like too. It assisted me. It assists the performers in kind of getting in the right characteristic of things, and then maybe also helps listeners too, kind of expand what they might appreciate about the music.
Yeah, I think it's a brilliant idea, really. Having the tasting notes for a piece of music, piece of piano music. That's really, it's new, really,
Yeah.
and delicious. And, um, so, I mean, continue talking about this, how it appeals to piano students and pianists. One thing I found was this really nice combination with tradition that usually pianists found in a music, and of course, this other side of more 20th century, 21st century extended technique that's there's plucking and muting and playing harmonics and all that. But also there are phrases, right? That we always talked about phrase when we play Chopin or, Schumann, Beethoven, all these composers. So the sense of phrase that you can easily relate to. Of course, there are dynamics, and also there, I felt that there are the central pitches that work a little bit like kind of tonality in conventional repertoire, and you can easily recognize it. It starts with that, and sometimes it's just throughout the piece. You have this certain pitches that work a bit like non-harmonic tone, or the pitches that are not necessarily belong to this tonality, that kind of thing. So I think it was easier for students and pianists who are really not familiar with this kind of music to kind of start learning and also enjoying the piece. So that was, I thought, really nicely done.
Well, I appreciate that, and I can't say I was. I think that was intentional, but I wasn't actively thinking about that. I think it could be a result of how short the music is. You can't fit a whole lot of material in a 1 minute piece or a 2 minute piece. Definitely not a 45-second piece. So each piece I had to think about. I came up with a collection of pitches I would use. I guess not necessarily a key or a tonal center, but I tend to compose. I come up with chords that I like and that work together and kind of can intertwine and interlock. So each piece kind of has that going on, their own kind of pitch language, tonal language. But also each piece tries to, like we've talked about, tries to introduce. Well, not every piece tries to introduce an extended technique or a contemporary style, but a lot of the pieces, there's like one kind of point that it tries to make. Like this piece is it's all about muting the strings of the piano, and being very careful not to branch off into like different things. I always have this saying, especially when I'm teaching composition students, because when you're a young composer, and sometimes when you're not a young composer, there's a tendency to like include everything in the kitchen sink. Especially when you're writing for percussion, because there's so many possibilities, and there's so many possibilities that you can do with a piano too. And so
Right.
being very careful not to what I call kitchen sink it, where it does too much. And I think it's difficult to do that when it's a minute piece. You're kind of forced outside of that possibility. So I think kind of the efficiencies I tried to think about when composing these short pieces, how can these pieces exist and not feel like there needs to be more um, as well. I think that's where the different phrasing comes through, and yeah, just trying not to do too much, not to overwhelm a performer with the density of things, or a listener with the density of things, or myself with the density of things when I'm composing it. Um, and I guess I'm that was another plus side to these being such short pieces, is I didn't really have a chance to do that. I'll also say that these pieces by design were composed so that I could, I have a day job. I work kind of a 9 to 5 job, and so these pieces I was able to do in the evenings. I was able to compose them kind of start to finish each evening, or a weekend. And that was another thing I had to think about when composing Orchard.
Great. It's just, I guess, being kind of compact and making right choices and um, determined with that
Mm.
choice, I guess. So I think we can listen to a few pieces from Orchard and then talk about them a little bit more.
Sure, I'd love that.
So, what pieces from the collection are we listening to this evening?
So I thought it'd be great to include the very first piece I composed and the very last piece that I composed. So that was Yuzu, was the first one, and Carambola, which is starfruit. That's the last one. And they both kind of have a similar characteristic to them. They both kind of have these ascending lines, eh, but Yuzu is very sparse. It's very, I think, like I said, I try to think of efficiencies in the music, and so the piece kind of includes a very small set of pitches, and then kind of halfway through, there's yuzu or sour fruits. So there's like this kind of note that doesn't belong that appears and makes every kind of recontextualizes everything and makes it a little more dissonant sounding. Whereas Carambola is, it's the last one. I feel like it's kind of like it's like a very celebratory piece, I guess. Unmi, you've
Mm,
played it a bunch. I
yes.
don't know if you'd agree with that, but it's kind of more conventionally beautiful music, I guess you could say. It's got this very flourishing kind of sound, with these very agreeable pitches that are not as dissonant. We'll also hear Mangosteen and Cloudberry, which are, I think, my two favorite pieces in the collection. And um, this is debatable, probably only by pianists who might know the music, but I think Mangosteen might be the best, the best one I have, the best piece in the collection. Um, and Cloudberry, kind of like thinking about cloudy textures and cloudy music, And then also two pieces that include extended techniques, Okra, which focuses on the muted strings, the muted pitches, and kind of adds them in over the course of the piece. And again, I mentioned the slimy CD music, the kind of sustained pedal, flowing music at the beginning is the slimy part, and the muted pitches are the seated part. And then Buddha's Hand, which is another favorite of mine, which you commissioned, Unmi, which
Yes.
is all extended techniques. And while you're listening, I encourage you to Google Buddha's Hand. It's a citrus fruit that looks like a claw, looks like a hand, kind of messed up hand, I guess. And I kind of imagine what would this fruit sound like if it played the piano, and to me it just said, it would pluck the strings, like it would pluck the strings and it would do things inside of the piano. So that's why Buddha's hand is all inside the piano and kind of is it's almost an exploration of extended sounds in the piano for all pianists to kind of explore and have fun with.
Great. So now we are going to listen to Yuzu, Mangosteen, Cloudberry, Okra, Buddha scent, and Carambola. Great. That's beautiful. Just charming music. You listen to Yuzu, Mangosteen, Cloudberry, Okra, Buddha Sand, and Carambola. I almost want to say that we ate them.
Yeah, it feels like it sometimes.
Yeah. How long did it take to compose all 50 pieces?
So I can't say that I worked nonstop on them. There were definitely breaks in between composing like batches of the piece, but I composed the first one, I think either New Year's Eve 2017 or New Year's Day 2018. I can't remember which, but basically at the start of the year I composed the first one, and then I finished it in September. So it took about 9 months to compose the whole thing. Again, not 9 months of continuous work, but I wanted to make sure that people had an opportunity to learn about the project, and if they felt inclined to become a commissioner, I wanted to make sure that they had the opportunity to do so. And I think your students did the premiere of the some of the pieces in March
Yes.
of that year. So there were performances already happening before the piece was even totally finished. And I want to say that my initial goal was 30 pieces. I and then there was enough interest that I was like, okay, maybe 40. And then there was even more interest, and I just had to stop at 50 because I could probably write 50 more.
Right.
It could go on forever. So I unfortunately had to put a stop to it. But maybe one day there will be like an Orchard Part 2, which I think
Right.
a lot of the pianists who have been involved in the project always get excited when I tease that.
Yes, that would be great. I mean, another set of fruits.
Yeah.
Will be amazing. How many times did pieces were performed? Do you remember?
So prior to the pandemic, performances were happening very regularly. I believe I hope my memory's right, but it's about 200 times up to that
Wow.
point. So a lot of performances by a lot of different pianists. Of course, only once has it ever been performed all at once, the entirety of the collection. But yeah, Orchard has been presented in some form or fashion over 200 times. The pandemic, of course, kind of put a stop to all performances initially. But performances are starting to resume of Orchard. I live in Cincinnati, and there was a pianist here, Brianna Matsky, who just performed a collection of them in an outdoor concert. The weather was still nice, and she also presented the pieces with fruit pairings. So she just went to the grocery store and it was just fruit. And I have to say the best part of that performance, she performed among other pieces, Granny Smith, which is the music is kind of consists of these short staccato chords, and I think the tasting notes on the piece is like crisp and sour, and so it's these kind of slightly dissonant crisp chords. And she played this, and everyone had a little bit of Granny Smith apple to eat, and I heard these chords, and everyone around me, like the snap of an apple was happening, and it was just a really cool moment. And it's like, okay, I did I I wrote the music I intended to write because it's working. So and then of course your students soon will be playing some of Orchard, and
Yes.
with the forthcoming Orchard CD,
Right.
I anticipate even more performances to happen because, well, I'm sure we'll kind of dive into this, but a lot of people, when we crowdsourced the funding for the CD project, the score was part of the reward. People could select the score as a reward for donating to the CD project, and a lot of people got a copy of the score. So I anticipate even more performances happening now that things are opening back up and more performances are happening in general. And as we head into a new year, and hopefully no more COVID, hopefully that'll end soon, and more orchard can happen.
Yes, that would be amazing. You mentioned about this orchard recording, so it's exciting that the recording is coming out soon.
Yes. So in January, the CD will be released, and you've been talking about this sense of community that comes with the Orchard project, and I feel like it's not just been the original commission, not just the Tampa Museum of Art concert that happened where all the pieces were performed, but this recording was also, recording the pieces. We got 14 pianists to come to Tampa and record the music, and that was also just a fabulous time. It was fun to have so many pianists together, and then we crowdfunded for the release of Orchard, and I think 177 people donated to the project, and
Wow.
and I think it was pianist Grace Wong, one of the pianists who commissioned Persimmon, was the piece she commissioned. Uh, I think she made a comment in the Kickstarter video that by donating, everyone else, like whoever donates, also gets to be a part of the community, and it's really felt like that. I mean, it feels like the community of Orchard through performers and supporters. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger, and so I'm the CD, as you know, it's been multiple years in the making.
Mhm.
But it's so exciting that, yeah, it'll finally be here soon.
Yes, I can't wait to receive the CD, and also we had vinyl, so
Yep.
just wait to get that, and beautiful cover art thanks to artist Susan Braun. That was
Yeah.
another great collaboration.
Oh yeah. And so, yeah, Sujin's, I think, you know, the music, I think it's fair to say the music does stand on its own. But when Sujin, we commissioned her to do the album artwork, and
Mhm.
she did illustrations of each fruit, and something about having that visual element now, I think, just enhances the whole thing. I mean, it just really just ties all the music together. And so, yeah, the CD, it'll be a 2 disc set, the vinyl 2 disc set as well, and just I hope and anticipate it to be just a really beautiful thing to have, a tangible object, in addition to just all the music that you'll get to hear.
Yes. Um, I have slightly different question
Sure.
from what we just talked about. I don't think I have asked you this before. Did you have any kind of inspiration when you composed Orchard in terms of piano, traditional piano repertoire, or any um, piano repertoire? Um, I would like to know, actually.
So, yeah, I've been thinking about this a lot, because it was a long time ago that now that I composed the music. Um, I actually, I can't say there was too much. I wasn't listening to too much piano music, weirdly enough, which um, my composition teachers would probably be like, "Why aren't you listening to piano music while you write this?" I will say we heard Cloudberry, and one of the inspirations for Cloudberry was Luciano Berio's Luftklavier, which is from his, I think, 6 encore pieces.
Yeah.
So Luftklavier, I think, translates to air piano, or cloud piano, maybe. But anyway, that I felt like, okay, Cloudberry, that makes sense. Also, I'd mentioned Grace Wong and the piece she commissioned, Persimmon. She asked me to compose a piece that was similar to John Adams' China Gates.
Mhm.
So you could, and then other people commission pieces, like I would love a piece like Steve Reich music and stuff like so. there was like that kind of element. But really, I guess first of all, when I compose, or just in general in my life, I listen to a lot of not classical music. I listen to a lot of indie pop music, indie rock. I'm really into math rock right now, which is just like instead of things being in 4/4, they're in like more asymmetric meters that are really cool and interesting sounding. Uh, I I really like bluegrass music and jazz, and so all that kind of tends to make its way into my music in some way. But also, at I've always, well, not always, but I've I guess for the last 5 or 6 years been very interested in extended techniques in general, and that was through composers like George Crumb and Lachenmann and Beat Führer, uh, and and so like that was kind of just already ingrained in me by the time I got to Orchard. And I love the music of Takamitsu and
Mhm.
his and kind of the colors that he composes with. And I've always said, I'd love to blend like the colors of Takamitsu with like the sounds of Lachenmann because they're so totally opposite.
Right.
And but then also like think about that with this kind of non-classical music that I love to listen to, and how does all of that blend together? I guess we've been talking about like food and music a lot this for the past little while, so there's the saying like you are what you eat, and I think the same goes for composers. You are what you listen to. Like everything that I listen to kind of makes its way into my music in some way. Uh, so yeah, that I know that doesn't answer your question, maybe a little bit, but um, yeah, I think Orchard, the parameters were so specific, and like I said, the I had never written a piece for piano, solo piano before. So in a lot of ways, the goal was to what would my music sound like if it was just piano, um, which is an opportunity I'd never had to that point. So in addition to outside inspirations, it was also, well, all of this work that I've done in composition. Now it's time to write solo piano music, and what is my solo piano music going to sound like? How does that fit into all the other solo piano music that exists? So those were questions I had when composing that I hope were answered. I think so, but yeah, the my yeah my inspirations, they just vary a lot, and the music I listen to varies a lot, and I think it all makes its way into my music in some way.
Yeah, I think it's actually a better answer than my question. Um, one thing about playing new music and being involved with this kind of project is that you're not really limited to
Mhm.
the tradition, and you're not just limited to the conventional repertoire. Um, and it's great to know that how a composition comes together.
Mhm.
It's um, from all different kind of sides and all different kind of inputs
Yeah.
and experience and influences. It's not just one source. It's from many different sources, and um, I think that makes the music more interesting. It's not one side really, and it's can have a lot of different aspects.
Yeah, I think so. I will add though that there's been a lot of solo, not necessarily just solo piano music, but a
Mhm,
lot of piano music that I have since discovered since composing
mhm,
Orchard that I absolutely love.
mhm,
And when the time comes to write a solo piano music piece, again, I'll probably
mhm,
turn to these pieces and listen to them a little bit. One is actually a piano four hands piece by a composer who's based in the UK, Fumiko Miyachi.
mhm,
And I I've played this piece a lot on my radio show, Modern Notebook,
Mhm.
but it's up, down, top, bottom, strange, charm, and it's
Mhm.
all about quarks, like subatomic particles. I think it's just an absolutely beautiful piece, and it does a lot of the same stuff as Orchard. Actually, like over the course of the piece, she plays inside the piano, or the pianists play inside. There's two pianists. They play inside the piano. There's like more conventional music, that that just sounds like like piano music, traditional. There's another pianist, Ning Yu, who
Mhm.
has a CD. Forgive me, I'm googling right now. Uh, I'm trying to remember the name of this CD, but it's all contemporary works, um, by I think women composers. Pianist Ning
Mhm.
Yu, and it's the CD is called Of Being, and it has music by
Mhm.
Wang Lu, Misato Mochizuki, and Emily Pretorius. All of this whole CD is amazing. And then another one I think that just came out is a CD from pianist Julia Den Boer, which
Mhm.
I got to have a little preview of, thanks to the music label. Sent me an advance copy of it, and it's music that's all about resonance of space, resonance of the piano, um, and it's just all like I just listened to the whole CD and was amazed by it. And it's brand new. I think it came out as of this recording like 2 days ago. So,
Wow.
with music by Julia LaRusso, Linda Catlin Smith, Anna Thorfold's daughter, and Rebecca Saunders.
Oh, wow.
So another, all living women composers.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of the stuff that I found since composing
Mhm.
Orchard that I just absolutely love. I'm in love with, and I think it would have been nice to probably have listened to some music like that before composing Orchard, but there's always the next piece, and that's
Yes.
anytime I kind of step away from a piece and it gets performed, and it kind of goes on its own. It takes on its own a life of its own. I I always come back to it and say, well, I wish I did this, or oh, I'm not like 100% happy with this, but at the time of composing, I was a different composer than I am now. I was a different person sometimes than I am now, and I always have to tell myself, there's always the next piece. That
Right.
piece can live and exist as it is, and I can be okay with it because I'll have another chance to compose for solo piano or orchestra or whatever the instrumentation might be.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's so many great pieces for piano,
Yeah.
uh, and my pianist friends and colleagues, they have this amazing recordings by all different composers, and you introduced a lot of piano music in Modern Notebook, so yeah, we have plenty. I think.
I do I'm very drawn to solo piano music, and string quartet music is my other big
Yeah.
love. I think those might be my favorite. And there's so much good music for both solo piano and for
Yes.
string quartet. Just amazing music, that's always being composed. So
Yes.
it's a great time to be alive.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, it's about time to wrap this up, but I want to ask you my last question, about your experience, going through this project, and especially you have, this collaboration with piano students. I think that was probably something um, important and also new to you.
Mm,
And it was, for me, it was very meaningful, and it taught me a lot of different things in terms of teaching. So
mm.
if you can share your insights with us, that would be great.
Yeah, like I've said, this is the first time I've ever thought about music in a pedagogical way, um, and it's been so great to see so many different piano studios take on Orchard. And to my knowledge, I've gotten no negative feedback, and I hope that continues. But I will tell the story that there was a high school student who played some of Orchard. I think he was a high school senior, so he was about college age, and this had to have been a few years ago. But I had the chance to FaceTime with him before his performance, just so he'd never performed music by a composer that he could talk to before. So he was really excited and eager to meet a composer. And I think maybe that's the case with a lot of students who typically play traditional pieces. You know,
Yes.
they can't meet Beethoven, they can't
Right.
meet Mozart, and a lot of really standardized repertoire by composers who are living. Um, they might have they might be totally inaccessible. You know, they might not be. You might not be able to email them um, for one reason or another, or call them, or definitely not like video chat with them. They might not be willing to, or they might not be available, or whatever. So I spoke with this high schooler, and it was so long ago I can't tell you the questions that he asked, but you know, he asked some music. He asked some questions about the music and the pieces that he was playing, but he also had so many great questions that no one has ever asked me before about me and about what it's like to be a composer, and I just I never imagined that that would happen when composing Orchard. You know, we talk about this sense of community, of course, also being kind of an unintended happy consequence,
Yes.
but also having a young student interested in the music of living composers. It's so important, and it's just been really meaningful to me that I've had opportunities to speak with students, your students, of course, because I was living there in Tampa, and get to Zoom now, and that's great. But yeah, it's not something that happens with every piece. Maybe hasn't happened with any other pieces of mine where I get to talk with a student about it, and or a young person, and I hope it happens more because it's such a neat
Yes.
experience.
It is. Yeah, it is very important to the future of art music, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, where can I find out about the orchard and about you?
So everything is on my website, tylerklinemusic.com. My last name, Kline. And I think it needs to be cleaned up a little bit, but there's various pages about Orchard that has all kinds of information. And if you go to YouTube and search my name and Orchard, there's also a lot of video performances of Orchard from recitals and from the recording session that people can enjoy and listen to before the CD comes out.
Great. Thank you so much, Tyler, for being here and talk about orchard and giving us your insights.
Oh, thank you. I'm always honored to talk with you.
Thank you. Next time, we'll be joined by composer Juhi Mansal and her piano collection travels. Support us by donating. You can go to our website, contemporaryartmusicproject.org, and simply click the donate button. Help us continue our podcast, festival, and other exciting projects. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.